They just don't have their cameras on right now, or they aren't showing up. Chief White, Lieutenant Hobbs, and Public Works Director Goodman are all on the line.
Okay. All right. Is Dirk going to come back in
Where'd Dirk went? He's in there.
some way?
He's got his camera off, but he is in the meeting. Dirk, can you hear us?
Melissa, can you hear me? Melissa?
Yes, I can hear.
How many emails have you gotten in? I said,
I forwarded, let's see,
you forwarded,
I received 2 emails on item number 9 and item number 13, and 1 statement on item number 9 so far.
okay, did you get one from, the one from Mr. Hughes?
Yes, he submitted his statement in the town hall portal.
Okay. So when those things come up, you'll bring those up, I guess, huh?
Oh, there's Dirk.
I'll be checking them periodically throughout the meeting.
I'm sorry? I've got your instructions here, so I'll just, if I stick to the script, should I be all right?
You should be fine.
All right. Now, are we ready? Okay, welcome to the regular meeting of the Clear Lake City Council and Redevelopment Successor Agency, City Hall Chambers, at April 2nd at 6:03 p.m. Mr. Jones, do we have any announceable, I'm sorry, let's not go there first. Begin with, let's go with the roll call. Madam Clerk?
All right, Councilmember Purdock,
Here?
Councilmember Overton,
Here.
Councilmember Harris,
Here, and a reminder to mute when we do the pledge.
Thank you, I was going to say that, but, okay.
Vice Mayor Slutin,
Present.
and Mayor Kramer.
Here. Okay, those present, please stand for the pledge, and as Councilmember Harris said, please mute if you're going to repeat the pledge with us. Mr. Flora, would you lead us? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you'll remain standing for the invocation, I've asked Councilmember Purdock to once again lead us in that, or say that.
If you would bow your heads. Our dear Heavenly Father, we ask that you would be with us to guide us and lead us tonight as we do the business of this good city. We ask that your Spirit would lead us in the right ways that we should move for the betterment of all those that live here. We ask that your Spirit would be with those in leadership positions throughout this country and throughout our state, throughout this county, that we would all come together collectively as Americans to overcome this COVID-19 virus pandemic, that we will follow those directives that will help protect and keep those in our communities that are most vulnerable, which is turning out to be all of us. We need to think about that, and we ask that you would be with us to guide us in that. We ask that your Spirit would be with a couple of members of our community who have had loss. We ask that you would be with them and lift them up and comfort them due to the loss of a loved one. Father, again, we just gave you all the thanks and the glory through all the good work that you do and that you support and love us. And we do this in the name of your Holy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Councilmember Purdock. Okay, our meeting procedures tonight will be modified a little bit based on the current situation. While we're operating under these new meeting guidelines, I'll explain our meeting procedures. Agenda items will be open for public comment before final action is taken. Citizens wishing to comment on any agenda item should email the city clerk or submit their comment through our town hall portal. Comments received will be read aloud by either myself or a staff member during the agenda item. If public comment is received on an item not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the city council, that comment will be read by either myself or a staff member during public comment for up to 3 minutes. During council deliberation, I will call on each council member individually to provide comments in turn. After council deliberation, I will call for a roll call vote by the city clerk. If remote participant encounters technical difficulties, I'll ask that we continue discussing the item and the participant can rejoin when the technical difficulty is resolved. Okay, first thing is adoption of the agenda. To begin, we have, are there, City Manager Flora, are there any modifications to the agenda?
Yes, we'd like to ask that item number 13 be pulled. This is the item that we discussed at a previous meeting about revoking cannabis permits and the authority for that. We thought we were ready, but in doing an additional level of review, we're discussing it today and found that we think there's some other sections of the ordinance that are also implicated that we didn't initially find. And so we'd like to do a little bit more work on that and bring it back at a later time. And so we'd request that one be pulled for tonight.
Okay. We'll now call on each individual council member for modifications to the agenda. Council Member Hurdock?
No, sir.
Council Member Harris?
No, sir.
Council Member Overton?
No, Mayor.
Vice Mayor Slotin?
No additional change or comments on the agenda.
Okay, and I have none. Can I have a motion and a
Mr.
second?
Mayor, I make a motion to accept the agenda as submitted with the modifications made.
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second by Councilmember Overton to adopt the agenda as amended. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Okay, Councilmember Overton,
Aye.
Councilmember Harris,
Aye.
Councilmember Purdock,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Slutin,
Aye.
Mayor Kramer.
Aye. Motion passes. Now, Mr. Jones, any announcement on action from closed session?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there was no reportable action from closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Now we'll move to public comment. Public comment will be accepted via email and through the city's town hall portal prior to the start of the meeting. Each public comment emailed to the city clerk will be read aloud by the mayor or a member of staff for up to 3 minutes or will be displayed on the screen. Public comment, emails, and town hall submissions which are received after the beginning of the meeting will not be included in the record. Madam Clerk, have you received any public comments?
No, I have not.
Very good. Thank you. We'll now move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda, all items listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine in nature and will be approved by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a member of the council or audience requests otherwise, or if staff has requested a change under adoption of the agenda, in which case the item will be removed for separate consideration. Any item so removed will be taken up following the motion to approve the consent agenda. I'll now ask each council member if there are any requests to take separate discussion on consent items. Councilmember Overton?
No, Mayor.
Councilmember Harris? No. Councilmember Purdock?
No, Mayor.
Vice Mayor Slotin?
Yeah, I have one. Item number 8.
Number 8. Okay, that would be the Lake County Clean Water Program Low Impact Development Standards. We will and I have nothing more. I'd like to make now I'll accept a motion to adopt the consent agenda with the exception of item 8, which will be discussed separately.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make the motion to accept all except for number 8.
Motion's been made by Councilmember Harris
Second.
and seconded by Councilmember Overton. Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call?
Councilmember Purdock,
Aye.
Councilmember Harris,
Aye.
Councilmember Overton,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sluten,
Aye.
Mayor Kramer.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. We now have okay, so do we want to now have a staff report by City Manager Flora on item number 8?
City engineer is here to address any questions on this item.
Vice Mayor Slotin, since you asked that it be removed from consent, perhaps you'd like to ask your question?
I just want to commend that the city is adopting these standards. It's long overdue, and I'm happy to see it here. That's really the only reason I pulled it. I want to commend the staff to include this in our standards because it's very well needed if we want to keep this lake as clean as we possibly can. So I just wanted to thank staff, Public Works, and our city engineer to bring this out and having us adopt this. I don't have really any comment on it. I just want to thank him for doing this.
Any other, Councilmember Overton?
So does this meet our permit with the state?
Yeah, this keeps us in compliance with our MS4 permit.
That was our concern, that the thing is getting this done and working with them to not get fined again. So, okay, thank you. Great job.
Any other questions from council? Are there any comments from the public, City Clerk
I
Swanson?
have not received any comments on this item.
I'll bring it back for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, a motion to adopt.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I move that we approve Resolution 2020-13, a resolution of the City of Clear Lake to adopt the Lake County Clean Water Program Low Impact Development Standards Manual.
Second.
Motion has been made by Vice Mayor Slotin and seconded by Councilmember Harris. May I have a roll call vote, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Overton,
Yes.
Councilmember Harris,
Aye.
Councilmember Purdock,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Sluten,
Aye.
Mayor Kramer.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Glad we got that done.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. About that geese control thing. All right, we'll move on to business. Comments on agenda items will be accepted via email through the city's town hall portal. If you'd like to comment remotely, please send comments via email to the city clerk or via the city's new town hall portal found on the city's website. Identify the subject you wish to comment on in your email subject line or in your online town hall submission. Each comment emailed to the city clerk will be read aloud by myself or a member of staff for up to 3 minutes or will be displayed on the screen. I don't think it's going to be displayed on the screen. We got a tool already. Email comments and town hall submissions on each item will be accepted after the start of the meeting, but before I announce that, public comment for that item is closed. Emails and town hall submissions received after the closing of public comment for each item will not be included in the record. Okay, item number 9 is our first one up. Discussion about regulation of commercial cultivation of hemp. City Manager Flora, please proceed with your staff report.
City Attorney Jones is going to present the staff report on this item.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I want to give you a brief presentation on this item regarding the cultivation of industrial hemp. So at the February 20th regular city council meeting, the council gave direction to staff to look into this and to come back with a presentation with regard to the idea of whether the city can and should regulate the growing or cultivation of industrial hemp. So as the council's aware, we do regulate commercial cannabis, and that is found in the municipal code at section 18-12. There's a couple different sections within that. And one option, should the council want to regulate industrial hemp, commercial hemp, is to follow maybe suit that's similar to how we are regulating cannabis. And that is that you have to have certain odor controls, you have to have security measures in place, and it can only be in certain areas. Well, it's got to be indoors or in a hybrid greenhouse. I think it only has to be in the CB zones east of State Route 53. So if those are that is one opportunity. Now the council could give direction to staff to regulate in a different way. I will tell you that not a lot of cities are in the business of regulating hemp. I think we have the ability to. Counties are being more involved and a little more aggressive with it because the ag commissioners at each county level does have a particular role in regulating and issuing permits to the hemp growers. I don't think we as a staff are recommending that you issue permits like we do for commercial cannabis, but I do think that should the council want to put in certain controls about location, about odor, about security, those are the kinds of things we would like to know. And then at the next council meeting or at the soonest available council meeting, we would come back with a draft ordinance for first reading and further discussion of the council. That is my presentation at this point. I'd like to hear what the direction or thoughts are of the council so staff knows how to progress. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I'll now ask each council member, are there any comments to staff on this item? Council Member Overton?
I really feel that we should go in the same direction as what we do the cannabis, except for maybe not the permit process because it's not really an illegal substance, but the odor is still all the same. Everything else is pretty much the same with it. So I do feel that's the direction that I think as a city, being inside the city limits, we should go, because marijuana really so much, it wasn't just the marijuana, it was the smell. And hemp does the same thing. So I think we should just follow the same process as what we have with the cannabis.
Thank you, Councilmember Overton. Councilmember Harris.
I feel like in particular, we want to keep it out of residential zones. And then I would also like some feedback from our police department. We have two members of the police department here. If you can give me some feedback as to some concerns you may have with potentially somebody utilizing the declaration of hemp growing, but actually doing something other than growing hemp. Is that a concern for you? Or what other concerns may you have about hemp in general?
Let me wait until after Councilmember Purdock and Vice Mayor Slotin have their comments. Then I would ask that one or both of you, Chief White or Lieutenant Hobbs, give us your comments. So, Councilmember Purdock.
I hate to go against your will, Mayor, but I'd like to hear from the police department on this
So you're
before I make comment.
ceding your time, huh? Okay. All right, we can do that. Chief White, do you want to go first, or?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. I'm not entirely prepared to discuss the topic, but I will tell you that some concerns that I've seen from other jurisdictions are when you look at regulation is that, for example, if you have a field is determining whether it's actually hemp or it's actually cannabis. That's one of the concerns that I've heard. I think some of the other stuff that's talked about within the staff report, address it in terms of issues that people might bring up regarding smell and those sorts of things. So I don't have a huge amount to offer on the topic at this point, but that's some of the initial initial things that come to mind.
Okay. Thanks, Chief White. Lieutenant Hobbs?
I have nothing further to add.
Okay. Now, Councilmember Purdock, are you ready to comment or want to comment?
And I'm grateful to hear that, and I will kind of echo what we've talked about so far. I'm worried about the odor that it's put off. I'm worried about the size and scope of maybe some of the ag that may be done within the city limits. I'm concerned about the interaction with the neighboring properties, et cetera. I would echo Councilmember Harris's comments that if we're going to proceed and allow hemp, I think it should follow our cannabis rules. And if anything larger than that, it can be done in our C4 areas that have been designated.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Vice Mayor Slotin?
I have a slightly different opinion. I think this is a land zoning issue and a land use issue. I would like to see this process go through the Planning Commission. I hope that they get involved in that. We had a very strong participation in all the cannabis-related ad hoc committees, so I think it would be appropriate that this be discussed at the Planning Commission level as soon as possible. And I believe that everybody has had an email from Mr. Dave Hughes in regards to this issue. I want to make sure that gets recognized as put in the records.
I think there are comments also from another couple of others. So, thank you. My concerns are pretty much have been stated by everybody before me. The odor is always going to be a major problem. The security in making a mistake, but thinking that they have cannabis and not hemp, and the possible concerns and the violence that may cause. I don't really see a lot of difference between this and cannabis as far as the way we regulate it. It can go to planning, but I think it's an ordinance issue that we need to address. And I think we should put a moratorium on it until such time as we come up with an ordinance that is workable. Those are my comments. Are there any public comments, Madam Clerk?
So there are 3, and I can read them if you'd like, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay. The first comment is from Natasha Sokolowski. She states, for the hemp ordinance, which in theory I think is wonderful in retrospect for our local economy, but scientifically could pose a major risk for both the hemp farmers' finished product and sensitive practice. My main concern is cross-pollination. I'm a huge fan of hemp used for byproducts and construction, etc. However, unless it's an indoor hemp cultivation project, cross-pollination is very likely to occur from drift winds, which occur daily, and whatnot, and will end up turning the entire hemp CDB crop into a very high THC crop. If the finished product is not for use as a CDB product, for instance, if it's being used for the hull to make fibers, this won't be an issue. Has there been discussion on methods to prevent this from occurring? Because it happens all of the time for many hemp farmers around the country who are cultivating next to cannabis and vice versa, and usually ends in seriously overdrawn and unnecessary robust lawsuits. Please take into further consideration if possible. So that is what the first statement.
And she is, Natasha is...
Natasha Sokolowski.
And I think it said who she is on that email. Isn't she the owner or one of the owners?
Yeah. So at the end in her signature for the email, it states that she is the Chief Operations Officer for D&M Compassion Center LLC.
Okay, thank you.
And then the second public comment that I received on item number 9 is from Erin McCarrick. And she states, I support a temporary moratorium with an ad hoc committee to determine if there is a public desire for hemp, if it will endanger any existing agriculture and/or cannabis cultivation, and what the regulation should be. Hemp brought in aphids last year that affected other crops than hemp and cannabis. This is similar to what Lake County did, but because they did not have a moratorium, so it was hard to enforce any of the regulations the committee determined. That is the end of Ms. McCarrick's statement. And finally, the third comment we received, one statement on our new town hall portal from Dave Hughes. So this one states, regarding item number 9, a discussion on hemp. I am David Hughes and comment on behalf of my family and 5 other families living in Burns Valley area on Old Highway 53 and on Rose Lane. We ask that the City Council proceed with implementing a moratorium on hemp growing until such time as the City Council adopts an ordinance dealing with hemp or determines not to allow the growing of hemp within the city limits. Without the moratorium or a local ordinance, it is our understanding that state law would prevail under management of the County Ag Commissioner. This could allow growing outdoors, which is not allowed under our current cannabis ordinance. That makes it possible that someone could ask to grow hemp next to a residence. Under the county ordinance, we notice a 200-foot setback from neighboring residences. While we are not certain as to the odor emitted by hemp, if it is anything close to cannabis, 200 feet is certainly not sufficient. If the city adopts an ordinance, we hope it would be similar to the cannabis ordinance requiring indoor growing with noise, odor, etc., mitigation measures. In addition, we are concerned with the crime aspect of growing hemp, as we understand that the hemp plant is similar to cannabis, which could result in theft of plants mistaken for cannabis. We would prefer the City Council take the time to develop a responsible ordinance and enact the moratorium in the interim. I would be happy to submit names and addresses of all the neighbors, but wanted to keep this brief. That's the end of Mr. Hughes' statement.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
That's the end of the public comments I received.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Public comment on this item is now closed. I'll now ask each council member if there are any comments for deliberation on this item. Council Member Overton.
Well, I do, I think at this point in time, I'd be in favor of a moratorium until we can decide. I think there is some definite issues. It is getting that time for growing, so I think that's not a bad idea. I think we should probably do that. So I think that's something that I would be in favor of as we work on a decision to what we want to do with this situation.
Thank you, Councilmember Overton. Councilmember Harris.
I concur with Councilwoman Overton.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Councilmember Purdock.
I concur.
Vice Mayor Slotin.
I also concur that we need to enact a moratorium and go through a similar process, how we establish the cannabis regulations through ad hoc, and if that's appropriate, and through the Planning Commission
The hemp
process.
The hemp, you meant to say. You said cannabis, you meant to say hemp?
Yes. I said if we go through the same process as we did with the cannabis ad hoc committee and the adoption of and the recommendations from the Planning Commission, I would like to see a similar process.
Okay,
But I am in favor of a moratorium at this point.
so noted. And I agree with the 4 council members on this. So I think, do you have enough direction how to move forward with a moratorium at this point?
I'd like a little bit more. So it seems like we're clear on the moratorium. But as far as what you mean, okay, so first of all, let's talk about the process. So are you in favor of going through the ad hoc process, or do you want, with some direction tonight, for staff to come up with some recommendations and go to the planning commission and then bring it back to the council?
Let me jump in real quick on that, though, Mr. Flora. I think Councilman or Vice Mayor Slutin is correct, though. Because there is a zoning element to this that we have before, I think it has to go to Planning Commission. Now, the moratorium does not. But in terms of our overall amending of that section 18, I think, now whether it goes ad hoc is certainly a council discretion, but I think we're going to have to go to Planning Commission to make that substantive change to it.
Right, no, I agree with you. That's why I'm asking about whether you want to do the ad hoc or just staff draft something and go to the planning commission.
First comment? Yeah.
Yeah, well, first off is we haven't decided whether we want to have it or not. So the reason why I thought of ad hoc is to bring back the information to us is what's the good and the bad of this? You know, because I understand the chief had some concerns also. So I kind of want to know, is this something we even want to do? So during the moratorium, basically, I'd want information back on what's the pros and cons of having hemp here. You know, is it going to be more that people might steal it because it's marijuana? Do we want to just have it indoors? So, I mean, I think I'd like to maybe get a staff report from the police department, from the chief and you first before we even decide, maybe at the next meeting, decide whether we want to go on and have an ad hoc. I'd prefer to have an ad hoc and really investigate it, so.
You prefer to have an ad hoc, you say?
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to have some information back to see if we really want to continue on, even on with it. We may get information back and say we don't want to do anything. Just leave it and put a moratorium on it, period. So, I mean, I think I'd like to hear the information that the chief might come up with. I think sounds to me like he has some concerns, so.
Okay. Thank you, Councilmember Overton. Councilmember Harris or Purlock?
I'm fine with that, to run it across the ad hoc. I think that would be intelligent to have some eyes look over the scenario and see how, you know, especially the powers that be. It sounds to me like the cannabis industry is not, I mean, in general, just in the feedback we've gotten, is not really in favor of this because it's conflictory. So, yeah, I would like to hear back and see if it's something we would even want to entertain. And then, of course, too, planning.
Councilmember Purlock
I agree
with,
that it should go to an ad hoc,
okay.
then come back to planning.
All right. Vice Mayor Slotin, you agree with that, I assume?
Yes, I do. I think that's how the process should be.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that. Would the ad hoc committee be the same one, the same cannabis ad hoc committee?
Well, that's
That would
up
be
to
the
you,
next
but-
step in it.
But I want to clarify, because what Councilmember Overton said was not where we started, was not where we ended up. So does the council want to have the ad hoc develop a proposal and go to the planning commission and then to the council? What I heard you say, Councilmember Overton, is the ad hoc, work with the ad hoc and come back with some recommendations on whether we want to do hemp at all before we try drafting an ordinance. And then the council provide direction back to the ad hoc, and then we would go to the planning commission and back to the council if there was an ordinance. So I would like clarity on whether you
That's a good-
say
that's
you're
a good
agreeing with
comment.
her, is that what you want, or?
So may I add to this, Mayor?
Yes, you may.
Okay, so my thought was it sounded to me like the chief might have some concerns. So my thought was to have the chief and the city manager and legal work on this and bring back to us, you know, some ideas, the pros and cons of it. And then if we decide, yes, we want to go through with it, then we set up the ad hoc committee, let them put it all together as far as, you know, the ordinance and stuff, and then that would go to the planning commission.
So it wouldn't
So
really,
what happens if it comes back and we say, okay, it sounds like it's going to be a lot of trouble, we don't want it, let's stop it right then and there. And then putting together an ad hoc committee and doing all that may be just totally unnecessary.
so then at that point, it wouldn't be a moratorium if they made that. So you're suggesting that if it comes back that we don't want hemp, it wouldn't be a moratorium, it'd be a,
Right, then we
Ban.
put it, that we just don't want
Going to
it.
be a ban.
Right, it would be a ban on hemp.
okay.
So, but I think it would be kind of a waste of time at this point without seeing what the chief really has to say, the pros and cons of it. to even decide
so
if we want to put
moratorium-
a resolution together. I mean, that's why you'd put it ad hoc to decide what it is and how we want to put it together.
So the order of things would be the moratorium, have the staff, including primarily the chief and CPD, come back to council with recommendations, and then council decides whether they want to go ahead and go to ad hoc to develop an ordinance or just ban it.
Correct.
Does that sound,
If
does that sound like, does that sound,
looking for the steps that the council wants.
That's just my opinion.
well,
So, I mean, although with one caveat, though, I don't think it should be primarily Clear Lake PD providing
Well,
feedback,
I-
because this
Any
is primarily a
legal-
land
yeah.
use issue,
I
although
didn't
they
mean
will
to say
have
that.
valuable feedback, so. but-
Councilmember Harris?
I would assume that we would have a member of our police department in that ad hoc committee, or somebody, for a representative from our PD for the ad hoc committee, right?
If we even get that far.
Right. Okay. So yeah, I would kind of go a different direction in my mind. I would say assemble the ad hoc committee to put something together, and if the ad hoc committee decides that it's just collectively it's not something to move forward with, they could bring that back to us. But I think it should go to the ad hoc committee to discuss before it goes any further. And if they say yes, let's put this through, then it goes to planning and then it comes back to us. I mean, is that something viable? Can the ad hoc committee make that determination right there? Because then we have more people involved in it, not just our city staff, but we have the ad hoc committee involved in it.
They can make a recommendation.
And
yeah.
it still has to come back to us no matter what.
Right. No matter what, it's coming back to us.
Mayor, I mean, I would be
However
a
you want.
proponent of, minimizing the number of steps necessary if we have some direction. I mean, it seemed like early on, all the council members were in favor of treating it similar to cannabis. If we could talk a little bit more about exactly what that means, because, I mean, the cannabis community, from what I understand, their primary concern is cross-contamination. So if it's indoor, then they're okay with it. So that's one aspect of it. It could be regulated to just be indoors, but if treating it like cannabis means, is it only allowed in the zones that are currently zoned to allow cannabis cultivation, or is it allowed in any agricultural zone as long as it's indoors? Or, I mean, I think if we had just a little bit of feedback from the council on that, we probably could bring ad hoc committee together, move from that basis into an ordinance.
Councilmember Purdock.
I got to ask how this originated. Do we have a group that wants to raise hemp in the city limits?
Yeah, actually.
Okay, so that's the impetus for us moving forward. So if that's the
That
case.
was why I brought it up last meeting, yes.
Okay. So if that's the case, then I agree with city manager that whatever we can do to minimize the steps involved with getting something in place, then I'm for that. My understanding of hemp ag is that you want to grow it out like cornrows. So having an indoor hemp is going to be pretty expensive. So, yeah, I guess what I'm saying is I'm going to kind of circumvent a little bit, Councilmember Overton. I think when I look back at what we did for cannabis, we created the ad hoc and we brought all the people that were interested from all the different angles to the table, and then they gave they crafted through the city manager and staff's oversight a workable framework for an ordinance. And then it went to planning, and then it came to us.
So we would put a moratorium on until the ad
Moratorium now.
hoc committee comes back with something. I'm
Correct.
fine with that, so.
Well, just to clarify, the moratorium would go into effect at the next meeting.
Right, right.
The way the agenda is set up was direction. It didn't
Right.
say for action. So
Right.
All right.
the moratorium
gonna
would
bring
take
a
place,
moratorium, right.
assume that's the vote at the very next council meeting.
Yeah, right,
Okay.
correct.
Unless there's a special meeting in the meantime.
Councilmember Harris.
I'm in agreement with what Mr. Purdock just said.
Okay, so then if I understand correctly, the steps would be to come back next meeting, vote on a moratorium, and also direct that an ad hoc committee be formed to come up with recommendations, and the ad hoc committee would hopefully have a representative sample of staff and community members and probably hemp representatives or cannabis representatives, so we can get all sides of the issue.
But you established the ad hoc.
I will.
So.
I was just wanting to make sure that everybody was in agreement on that mix. Okay? So,
One more, I concur with Councilman Spurdock process as he outlined it.
thank you, Vice Mayor Slotin. And everyone else has had a comment. I think we all concur that you got the direction now.
I'm more comfortable with the direction now. Thank you.
Right. All right. So we will move on. You have consensus to item 10, which is authorizing the city manager to lease a modular office building, Resolution 2020-12. Mr. Flora, please.
Yes, Chief White will present the staff report on this item.
Okay, Chief White?
Thank you. Good evening again, Mayor, members of the council, and the public. So as you recall, back in August, you directed staff to move forward on the animal control shelter project. As part of that project, we are demolishing the office building, and we'll be replacing that with the proposed leased modular office building. Initially, it'll be used as the temporary office space, but will eventually become a more semi-permanent office at the facility once a place has been built to locate it. We've been working with a vendor called Mobile Modular Management Corporation over the past few months, and we've been able to identify a cost-effective option, which is a sales office type unit. You typically see those where they're selling new homes and so forth. The advantage of these is that they have finished flooring, interior doors, exterior windows, and things that we would typically have to add to a more traditional construction type mobile office. With doing this project, we've identified that they have various units that come in that have been leased out in the field. And what we've been finding is that due to the turnover, as well as figuring out the timing for the larger scale project, we've lost out on several units. So what we're asking the council to do is to authorize the city manager to lease a suitable sales office from Mobile Modular when one becomes available for an initial term of 48 months. And assuming that whatever one becomes available meets our needs. Due to the project nature, as well as the project timing, as well as the refurbished nature of the product, it wouldn't make sense to engage in a formal RFP process. Therefore, we'd request that you waive the competitive bidding process. The estimated cost is $14,500 per year for a term of 4 years. There are delivery fees of about $6,500, which are based upon the prevailing wage requirements. And at such time that they remove the office, there is a fee of $4,500 for the removal. The timelines are based upon a kind of cost-benefit analysis in terms of whether we ultimately decided to buy the unit and keep it, as well as what the monthly fee would be. So the 4 years seem to be the initial best approach. We have looked at some other options out there, and we've also consulted with the city engineer, and he reached out to some of his contacts. And at this time, it seems that this is the best course of action, and it would be necessary to move on this in order to move on the rest of the animal control project. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you, Chief White. Councilmember Overton?
I have no questions. No.
Okay, Councilmember Harris?
Chief White, for the 4-year term, if we're assuming that we're taking delivery and returning and we're keeping it for the 4 years total, that's a $68,000, almost $69,000 investment onto that modular, which is a trailer, I assume, like type of a trailer, right?
Yes.
And now, you had mentioned that there is a buy option. What have they talked about as far as the total purchase price? Is that something that could be negotiated right out of the gate, where we could just be working towards the total purchase price?
I'll let Lieutenant Hobbs, he worked with them and can kind of explain to you about how that works, but it's not exactly an advantageous process.
Go ahead, Lieutenant Hobbs.
Yes, essentially, the cost to purchase from most of the companies that are selling these, there's not a significant savings unless you're going to have the building for a long-term use. In the short term, at most the time periods we looked at, from 0 to 7 or 8 years, it seemed to be more cost-effective to do the lease versus purchasing the trailer units. Particularly this sales type unit that is, like the chief mentioned, is a little more dressed up of a trailer, has normal interior items that are better than a standard like work trailer that you see out at a job site.
And Lieutenant Hobbs, are there other things that fall under the auspices of our responsibilities as far as this, as it's a lease, or is everything associated with this building taken care of by the leasor, the leasee? Did I flip that backwards? My good.
Leasing.
The leasee.
Lessor. Oh,
Lessor.
yeah, you're talking about us.
Yeah, who's responsible for the structure during the time that we have it leased?
If there's damage to the trailer, we would be responsible. Yes.
Damage is one thing. Okay, so damage. My concern was more about just the ongoing wear and tear on there, the different fixtures involved in it. Water heater, the electric, I don't know what all's involved in this thing, but that would be my thought. Is I know with a lot of leased vehicles, there's different things that are covered, and I didn't know if this would be a situation where if after a period of time you could upgrade it, for example, or something to that effect.
My understanding from talking with the agent at the company and reading the lease, the standard wear and tear things we are not going to be built for. So obviously, if the trailer is in a little worse condition when we give it back, we're not responsible to fix those items. We would only be responsible for the damage, not wear and tear.
Copy that. Thank you so much for that time.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Purdock.
So I just want to, the total fees that we're looking at the end of the 4 years is just shy of $70,000 for the office building. And what is the next steps? What are we going to do after the 4 years? I wasn't clear on that.
Chief White, Lieutenant Hobbs.
Yeah, so we would be looking for a longer term solution. We could continue with, essentially leasing the office. We could look at buying it out. It really just depends on where we're at that moment in time.
What have you negotiated a buyout fee? If you were to buy it out at the end of the lease period, is that amount established? At the end of 48 months, and if we decided we wanted to keep that building, how much would we have to pay the company to purchase it?
I'm not sure that they put that in the contract. They do put in what I guess the cost value or something is of it, but I think that's something that you work with them. Because the other option could be is that we could tell them to come trade it out with a new one as well at that point in time if we wanted to continue going that route. We could certainly look at it before we enter into the agreement with what we're asking for tonight is to get a little bit more clarification with that. The only thing that I would add is just that timing is definitely of the essence. The other larger scope, which you can't see from within this staff report because the item hasn't come to you yet, but the bids came in all significantly higher than the engineer's estimate for the work at the project site. So we're really trying to sharpen the pencils to make sure that we come in as close as we can so we don't have a lot of, we're balancing against timing and cost and everything else to try to deliver the project.
Okay, would 2 weeks be a problem as far as at least finding out if you can negotiate a buyout fee and what that would be? If you chose to buy the lease property out?
I can't tell you. The trailer, it might not be an issue, but I think we lost the last one like 7 days after we had talked to them about it.
Okay.
So the other thing that I would just throw out there is that, given the overall project cost, the whole reason why we're looking to lease this is that we simply don't have the money to buy one. I mean, obviously, when you look at the cost of leasing versus saying, hey, what if we just bought an office, I mean, probably our preference would be is to buy one just like we were buying the kennels. The fact is, we don't have enough money to do it. So our next best option is to look at a lease. The other issue is that, you know, we have to demolish the current office building there, so we have to have somewhere to keep continuity of operations. So we're gonna have to lease something. We could just do something shorter term with a different kind of a trailer setup, but it's gonna be very complicated, to say the least.
Okay.
So I'm just curious, and funding for this, did I understand some was grant funding, or is it all general fund?
We're pending approval on a USDA grant.
So the funding source we have, I think technically it's conditional approval from USDA grant, and then there is going to be a little general fund required to complete the project. And then there's also Series A funding that was set aside for this. But between the grant and the Series A, there still isn't enough to get the project done, particularly when the cost came in over what we were expecting at the time. Our engineers' estimates were low. And so, you know, I understand the concerns you have. I don't know how long it's been since any of you guys have been out to the animal shelter, but they've been very patient for a number of years, and we really need to get some suitable facilities out there. And this is one of those things where we had a discussion and felt like the lease was a way to avoid having to figure out a way to come up with $80,000 or $90,000 to buy one of these.
Okay. Vice Mayor Slotin.
I understand there is an urgency to this, so I want to be able to give our city manager the authorization to enter into this lease. I trust his financial judgment at this point. So I want to move to approve the resolution.
I haven't called for a motion quite yet. So,
Okay.
but when I do, I'll give you the first shot at it. I also am concerned with a lease that of $14,000 a year, that at the end of it we have nothing, since my asking you whether there was a buyout. That said, I also understand the urgency and the fact that we don't have a lot of other good choices, and even though in the long run it may cost us a few more dollars down the road, today that's the only way we're going to have the money to do it. So I do understand that. I wish it weren't quite that way, but I wish that the kennel part would have come in lower, but it hasn't. So I am in agreement with it, even though I don't like it. So now is there any public comments on this agenda item, Madam Clerk? Are there any public comments?
No, Mr. Mayor, we haven't received any public comments on this item.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Public comment on this item is now closed. I'll now ask any council member if there are any comments for deliberation on this item.
I move that we approve resolution 2020.
Whoa. Haven't quite there yet. Councilmember Overton, do you have any comments?
So I guess one of my things we were saying, but we need to move fast on this. Are you saying that we can't even borrow the money to buy this straight out for less money than this? I mean, if we're going to be
You're
making
asking
payments anyway,
if we could incur debt to purchase it?
we're going to incur this debt and have nothing to show for it at the end.
I mean, I don't know how, I mean, there may be some terms that would allow, but I don't think we could probably likely incur a reasonable rate on a modular unit. And, you know, I just want to say too, I mean, one of the reasons that we're looking at this modular system was because the plan for a number of years was to figure out a way to come up with a facility that really the city couldn't afford. And so the decision was made in conversations with the ad hoc and the council quite some time ago that we wanted to scale it back, have something that potentially could be moved to another location in large part if we decided that the whole airport property was going to be sold and it wasn't likely to go there. And so that's kind of why we structured this whole plan in this manner.
Okay, all right, well, all right, so, thank you.
I think in general, if you extrapolate that over 48 months, it's $1,400 and something a month. If we just look at it from the perspective of leasing a commercial space that's ideal for our needs, for that price is very reasonable in general. So I'd say we desperately need this. We need to move forward as soon as possible. And I know the situation isn't necessarily ideal with not owning it at the end, but it's this kind of a concept has worked out quite well with our police vehicles. So I think the same kind of concept may work quite well with this. So I think given the situation, I'd like to see this move forward.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Well said. Councilmember Burdock.
I support it.
Vice Mayor Slotin, any comments before I call for a motion?
I support it, and can I make a motion now?
Now you can make a motion.
Okay. Approve Resolution 2020-12, authorizing the city manager to enter into a lease with Mobile Modular Corporation for a modular office building for the animal control facility.
Motion's been made. May I have a second? Second's been made by Councilmember Overton. And we have a call to roll, please.
We lost Melissa.
Did we lose Melissa?
Melissa lost her internet connection, so I'll do the roll call.
All right.
Councilmember Overton. Councilmember Harris.
Aye.
Councilmember Burdock.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Slutin.
Aye.
Mayor Kramer.
Aye. Motion passes. All right. Move on to item 11, authorizing the city manager to purchase 2 modular kennel buildings, resolution number 2020-14. City Manager Flora, do you want to proceed?
I believe Lieutenant Hobbs will present the staff report.
Lieutenant Hobbs.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. In August of 2019, the council directed staff to move forward with plans for the new animal control shelter. As part of this project, 2 modular kennel buildings will be added to the site. Currently, the kennels are located in the Public Works hangar building and have outdoor overflow kennels. The facility was not built for the current use and lacks the adequate space for the animals we regularly have. Indoor kennels are often doubled up from their intended capacity, which reduces the area for the animals to have to walk around and live. The outdoor kennels were intended for overflow, and they're often filled with animals. There's no room in the current shelter for the veterinarian to do examinations or space to quarantine animals. Staff has been working with Horizon Structures, LLC, over the past year to identify suitable kennel buildings to purchase. The most cost-effective option is to acquire 2 purpose-built modular kennel buildings that are delivered, placed on our site, and connected to utilities. The structures will include plumbing, HVAC, a combined capacity of 18 kennel boxes and 18 dog runs, storage room, a cat room, and an examination room. The buildings are ADA compliant. Staff is requesting the City Council authorize the City Manager to purchase the 2 buildings from Horizon Structures. Due to the specific and unique characteristics of the buildings that were custom designed for this project, we do not believe it's prudent to engage in a formal RFP bidding process, and we're requesting the Council waive the competitive bidding process. The estimated cost for this part of the project is $179,980, with a portion of the overall project cost anticipated to be funded through the USDA grant, which is pending approval.
Thank you, Lieutenant Hobbs. Welcome back, City Clerk Swanson. I will now ask each council member, starting with Councilmember Overton, if they have any comments to staff on this item.
So, so this is going to house, basically, this is going to be our whole facility, is that correct?
the two modular buildings combined with the modular office building in Chief White's report would feed the facility.
Okay.
We would still retain, though, the inside kennel units as well as the outdoor kennel units.
Okay, and what happens if we don't get approved with this USDA loan or grant? Then
I think the city manager, I think I misspoke earlier when I said it was pending approval.
Oh.
The technical term, I believe it's conditionally approved. Is that right, city manager?
Yeah. So we got the letter last week that it was conditionally approved. So they haven't like finally signed off on it. I'm not going to put my signature on there till I know for sure. It's been extremely frustrating. They told us initially over a year ago that they had money that they wanted to spend and they would get it out as soon as possible. And here we are a year later trying to rush, and we've already lost out on some previous modular units that we had hoped to acquire. But yeah, I think it's 99.9%, but we need to have a final letter from them.
So you'll wait till you get the final letter before the purchase of this here? Right. Correct, okay. That's the only thing I worry about.
Councilmember Harris?
Yeah, this has been a long time coming. I appreciate the efforts that you've put in, Tim Hobbs, Chief White, and the rest of the city staff. I have been out to the kennels many, many times, and yeah, this has been absolutely needed, and I can't wait to see this happen, so I'm very supportive. Looking forward to moving forward on this.
Councilmember Purdock?
Yeah, it's very much needed. I don't travel out to the kennels very often, or as often as you do, I suppose, but I was out there the other week looking at it, and not within the compound. It definitely needs to be fixed. I had the same question that Councilmember Overton had, is just, it seemed as though in Chief White's presentation, urgency was kind of the word of the day. But I'm a little apprehensive if we don't secure the funding, and if it's been a year in the process,
Yeah, I mean,
how long are we going to hold off?
The process was, and I don't know if Chief White wants to speak to this. No one's been more frustrated with this than he has, but with the application process, we submitted the application, and then they wanted to see this document, and then they came back and they wanted to see engineered plans of the ADA accessibility, and it's just one trickle of things after the other. I did reach out to our representative and let him know that if we didn't resolve this, extremely quickly, that I would talk to the USDA director, Kim Van, and we were able to finalize and get the conditional letter relatively quickly after that. I do have her personal cell phone number, so if I don't have a letter next week, I'll be calling her and making sure that we get this wrapped up.
Like we lost the clerk. No, I appreciate that, because it seems like we're kind of on a slippery slope.
It's been very frustrating, and the units that we had spec'd initially, it took too long. We lost out on those, and it really is important that we get these under contract as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mr. Purdock. Thank you, Mr. Flora. I know, I'm not forgetting anybody. Got a little checklist right here. Vice Mayor Slotin?
I'm all in favor of this. I just want to make sure that if sometime in the future we move the whole animal shelter, these things can be picked up and moved over, right? Correct?
That's the idea.
Okay. Also, I'm happy to see there's a cat room in there. I've gotten emails from people that they have no place to have cats brought, so I'm glad to see that.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Slotin. I concur that this has been a long time in coming, and I also have access to Kim Van's number. We need to push it as quickly as possible. I'm really excited to see it happen. I get out to the animal shelter fairly frequently as well, and it most definitely needs these upgrades. So, all for it. Are there any public comments, Madam Clerk?
Mr. Mayor, I have not received any public comments on this item.
Okay, thank you. Public comment on the item is now closed. I'll now ask each council member for any council members for any comments for deliberation on the item. Councilmember Overton.
No, I have no further comment.
No further. Councilmember Harris.
Nope, ready to move on a resolution when you allow me.
Councilmember Purdock.
No other comments.
Vice Mayor Slotin.
No additional comments, and please, Phil, Mr. Councilman Harris, proceed with the motion.
Well, thank you for giving me that instruction, Vice Mayor Slotin. Councilmember Harris, would you like to?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to approve resolution number 2020-14, authorizing city manager to purchase 2 modular kennel buildings from Horizon Structures LLC for the animal control facility.
Motion is made by Councilmember Harris and seconded by Councilmember Overton. Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Overton,
Aye.
Councilmember Harris,
Aye.
Councilmember Purdock,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Slutin,
Aye.
and Mayor Kramer.
Aye. Motion passes. We'll now move on to item 12, which is the fiber internet contract with AT&T, in parentheses ACC, for the Senior Community Center. That's resolution number 2020-15. City Manager Flora, would you like to give the report?
Chief White will give the staff report on this item.
Chief?
Good evening again. This item, if you'll remember, back to the last emergency situation we were dealing with, which was PSPS, the governor had allocated funding as part of a resiliency allocation program, sort of like a grant. We put in for that, and one of our requests, consistent with their allowable cost, was for a redundant fiber optic internet connection at the Senior Community Center. That's what we use, obviously, as our CRC center during PSPS events and as a resource center during other disasters. The only current internet connection there is owned by the Senior Center, which is a cable connection, and so we have to arrange for a generator to be tied to a pole, a nearby pole, in order to keep that going. So this would allow us to have a redundant connection. Although it's not part of this request, part of the grant, we are looking to establish a microwave link between City Hall and the fire department, and then the fire department and the Senior Center, which would enable everybody to have the redundant connections. Our connection at City Hall is through MediaCom. The only other fiber provider is AT&T ACC group. So for redundancy reasons and with some past failures we've had with MediaCom, it makes sense to have what's called a disparate provider, another provider. So we're requesting that in this one that you waive competitive bidding and go with AT&T ACC. The funding amount is $7,100 per year plus taxes and fees for a total of 3 years. The allocation would cover the cost of the agreement.
Thank you, Chief White. Councilmember Overton, do you have a?
Mr. Mayor, if I could just, I got a text that it's kind of hard to hear Councilmember Overton, so maybe you could just move a little closer to the mic. Thank you.
Geez, that's unusual. So, okay, so is this just going to be something that's going to be there in case of the fire, like MediaCom still is there also? Or is this going to be in place of?
No, the plan would be is to extend our, so it would be on all the time. And the plan would be is to offer the Wi-Fi like what we have at the park and at City Hall. So there would be a Wi-Fi there all the time for people using the facility, et cetera.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilmember Harris?
I have nothing.
Councilmember Purdock? Nothing. Vice Mayor Slotin?
Yeah, one quick question. Does the Lake County broadband have a similar service?
Lake County Broadband uses AT&T ACC as their backbone.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
My only question, just to clarify, so both MediaCom and AT&T would be connected all the time?
So we would keep our current MediaCom fiber that's at City Hall, and then this one would be dropped at connected at the Senior Center, and through the microwave they would all essentially be able to access each other. So it's they kind of link up together.
Okay, thank you.
I could get really technical if you'd like, but we might be.
No, that's okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just add one thing. Chief White didn't mention this, but since we've had a MediaCom connection here at City Hall, we have had a few reliability issues, I'll say. And our understanding is that AT&T's fiber connection rarely has those problems. And so that's another reason that we feel like it's prudent to go with AT&T for this connection.
So that leads to the next question is, does the AT&T leak back to City Hall?
Do have
so
an
it will through the microwave is the plan, but we're still a ways out with engineering that. However, in the last 3 months, because of our E911 project, we actually had fiber plumbed into City Hall. It was completed just a few weeks ago. So we have access to that at such time if we needed to turn that on as well. But hopefully with the microwave, we won't need to do that. But there are some logistical things we have to work out for the microwave. There's a tree in the way.
Yeah.
So we'll have a lot of redundancy here at City Hall as well.
Yeah, and as well as the fire department too. They're a big part of this project.
Right, okay. Thank you, Chief.
Sure.
Madam Clerk, are there any public comments on this item?
Mr. Mayor, I have not received any public comments on this item.
Thank you. Public comment on the item is closed. Again, I will ask each council member if there are any comments for deliberation on the item. Councilmember Overton.
No, there's not, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember Harris.
No.
Councilmember Purdock.
Nope.
Vice Mayor Slotin.
No additional comments.
All right. I will now take a motion to adopt item 12.
Mayor, I'd
I
like to make.
move that we adopt the resolution 2020-15, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Clear Lake authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with AT&T ACC for fiber internet services for the Senior Community Center.
That'd be a 3-year contract on the motion. Motion's been made. May I get a second? I've got a second from Councilwoman Overton. Madam Clerk, may I have a roll call?
Councilmember Overton,
Aye.
Councilmember Purdock,
Aye.
Councilmember Harris,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Slutin,
Aye.
and Mayor Kramer.
Aye. Motion passes. Okay, item 13 has been deleted. So we are through our business items and move up to city manager and council member reports. City Manager Flora.
Yeah, so I don't have a lot to add. Of course, we're all closely watching the situation in Lake County and across the world related to COVID-19. There's still no positive tests in Lake County as of earlier this afternoon. Most of the focus currently remains on enforcement of the health officer's shelter-in-place order, and then planning continues for the time when inevitably we have some cases here in Lake County. The supply chain is struggling across the United States, and certainly here in California, it's been extremely difficult to get a number of pieces of equipment and other items for first responders and others, but currently most of the things requested have been supplied. Did get some news just a little while ago since we've been in the meeting, and so I don't know if any of you have heard about this. I'm not sure when the governor announced it, but apparently he has allowed the deferral of sales tax from local businesses to local jurisdictions, which is pretty shocking, I think, and is something that while it may be helpful for businesses to be able to keep that percentage and maintain their operations, it's going to be a big problem for folks when it has to be paid, and it's certainly going to be an enormous burden on local jurisdictions such as the city to make sure that we're able to maintain services through this event and into the future. So I don't know what to say other than that. It's something that's very surprising to see, but we'll certainly be looking into that more.
It's deferred, not,
That's what I understand. It's a deferral, but if you defer the sales tax, you still owe it, and you spend it on whatever you spend it on. That doesn't mean it's going to be any easier to pay it back later. So.
is that a voluntary deferral, or?
I don't know. I'm telling you what I know right now, which isn't very much, but it's very troubling.
Yes, it is.
And so I was going to make a mention about our budget process, which seems even more timely now, but our intention at this point is to sort of simplify our process from what we've done in previous years. Essentially, we plan to move forward with a status quo budget from the current fiscal year and be prepared to amend that as we move forward. Be recommending probably very minimal changes to the budget that we're currently operating under. It remains to be seen how our revenue streams are going to be impacted. On one hand, we have a lot of small businesses that restaurants and things that aren't operating, and there is going to be an impact, but some of our larger sales tax generators such as Walmart, Safeway, other grocery stores and things, I've seen some numbers that show that most of those major retailers are up 40% plus, and so we don't know how much it's going to impact us, but this deferral thing has me worried. And then of course we generally are receiving around $400,000 a year in TOT, which we'll be receiving very little through this period. So it's something that is going to be a real challenge for us. Just a couple other things. The animal shelter bid, Chief White mentioned this a little bit earlier, that we're still trying to negotiate with the low bidder to get down in a closer range with where the engineer's estimate and available funding are. We expect to have that before the council at the next meeting, and so this would be the additional work required to do site improvements, the turf, utility hookups, and whatnot. So we plan to bring that back at the next meeting. Additionally, at that meeting, we expect to have the final MOU related to the Hope Center. So just to let the council members know, we've continued to negotiate with the partners on this based on council direction. I believe we are on the precipice of an agreement, so as soon as I get a slightly revised agreement back, I'm going to be sending that directly to all the council members for you to look at and then provide any feedback you have. But we would have it on the agenda for the 16th, hopefully, for approval on that. And then I think all of you were included in an email from Mr. Hughes, but the letter of intent that the city has related to the airport property expired. We've been anticipating a letter from those folks so that we could have it on tonight's agenda, but that didn't come in time, and so that will be expiring on, I guess, Monday. Will be there will be no agreement there, and so I believe it'll be our intention to have a discussion on the 16th on that item as well, but just want to make sure you're aware of it. So unless you have any questions, I think that's my report.
Any questions from anybody? Okay, Councilmember Purdock.
Attended no meetings, have nothing to report.
Councilmember Harris.
No meetings, but I would say that given the situation that we're in, I know I'm a small business owner. There's a lot of small business owners in our community that are being impacted heavily by this COVID-19 scenario. There are some resources out there, and I would suggest anybody that is a small business owner to look into SBA.gov for some help in securing some funds to sustain your business. The last thing we would want to have happen is to lose any of our small businesses in our community as a result of this situation. We appreciate everybody's adhering to the rules and regulations regarding the distancing and closure of non-essential businesses, but I do know that that comes with an impact. So again, that's as Small Business Administration, SBA.gov for more information on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could add on to that really quick, Mr. Mayor. So the Lake County Economic Development Corporation has been trying to help get information out about those resources and others. They had a webinar this week that was attended by over 100 local businesses, but encourage anyone, business owner that's listening or wanting to ask questions about the assistance that's available. That's a good place for them to start and hopefully get some information and assistance.
Thank you, City Manager Flora. Council Member Overton.
Well, same. I don't think any of us have went to any meetings because we're doing what we're told to do. So, but I do want to thank all the volunteers and staff, and especially my council members for helping out our seniors and helping get funding. The Rotary Club, local, and LARCA. Appreciate the support to all the centers throughout Lake County. We're in a detriment. We all have a rough time already, so the money definitely helps us keep going. And I really want to thank all the people that have volunteered to step up and help out. It's made it go way. I said we're getting too good at this with these emergencies. We went way too smooth, but if it was not for the volunteers and the staff really stepping up, and my council members, I really appreciate. You have no idea. I've went through a lot of different things, and most council members don't show up. So Russ has always been there, but it was really nice to have every single council member come and help, and I really want to say thank you. My staff and all of us and our seniors appreciate you guys as our council. I'm proud to be here.
Thank you, Councilmember Overton. Vice Mayor Slotin.
I have one item that has been brought to my attention the last couple of days is that there are, since all the kids are now being schooled at home, not all of them have access to internet, which is obviously the critical part to it. So, and with the conversations with the superintendent of schools, there are apparently quite some gaps in internet coverage, both financially for parents and also just physical problems in internet coverage. I was wondering if the city has any capability. They're talking about mobile hotspots that kids can use during a certain time frame. I'm not sure who I should be asking this, but maybe Andrew, you can comment on that, Chief.
Our challenge is just how to get it out close to where they're at. So as you know, we have the one hotspot that's at the park, but we currently have really limited abilities. I will mention that the connection that's going in at the Senior Community Center, we're specifically allowed in that proposed contract that we could offer public internet services as a regular thing out of there. It'd still be geographically limited to that area, but that is one of the advantages of the contract with them. But yeah, I've heard that same concern too. It's just we don't have, a broad microwave network to where we could set up stuff throughout the city, unfortunately, without bringing people around one small area.
Yeah, would Lake County Broadband have solutions? I'm just trying to, this is just brainstorming to see how we can help.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the challenge for anybody is to kind of set up that network on demand. It is not technologically impossible, but it's difficult to, just suddenly bring that on board. I think that, the schools may look to talk to some of the cellular providers and see what they offer.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Slotin.
No further comments or reports.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Slotin. As with all of you, I've not been to any meetings with regard to LARCA and that part of it. We were pleased, LARCA was pleased to be able to help the 4 senior centers in the county. And I just want to put it out there that LARCA is accepting donations because we expect to continue to help as needed, knowing how much it costs to deliver meals on the Meals on Wheels program and what your limitations are. We're going to continue to need to help with that program. So I hope everyone out there, if they're looking to make a donation anywhere, larca5130.org, if you want to do it online, or they'll give you instructions how to do that. On a lighter note, looking outside, I see that our park is now getting ready to be hydroseeded. It looks like all of the cultivation is well underway. So we've got something to look forward to this summer.
It's getting closer. Hopefully the hydroseeding will happen. I think it's probably going to be the week after next. There's still, they kind of worked out a plan today on being able to get as much of it done as possible while still making sure that we can install all the rest of the equipment and whatnot. For example, the shade structures are supposed to be shipped next week, as well as the bandstand. And those are things that are going to require a little bit of use of the lawn. So it's all coming together. One big piece of it too is the water system. The existing pump system, as you know, fails every year, and it's failed multiple times over the last month or so. And trying to, we don't want to hydroseed unless we know that we're going to have a water
plus you can
supply.
water it.
And so I think we have a couple solutions for that. There is going to be a new system installed that will have 2 new pumps that we're going to be placed underground in a vault, so that we don't have a big building on the waterfront. And we're just trying to get all the final timing worked out. I think we have a good plan right now. The only thing I was told today that won't be here in time for May 15th is probably going to be most of the lights may not arrive, even though we ordered them in January. Anyway, that's the only hiccup I'm aware of at this point, but everything else seems to be going pretty smoothly.
Speaking of the water, I was kind of excited to see 2 sprinklers running in the dog park area.
Yeah, they've tested them all out and had all of them running to make sure everything's working. The only problem has been
Is the
the
pump.
pump.
All right. Well, thank you. So that concludes our reports. So future agenda items. I'll now call on each council member individually for future agenda items. Councilmember Overton, is there anything you'd like to see? No, sir. Councilmember Harris, is there anything that you'd like to have added? Nope. No. Councilmember Purdock.
Not at this time.
Vice Mayor Slotin.
Not at this time.
Okay. And I don't have anything at this time either. So thank you to everyone who took the time to submit your comments, and to those who are watching our meeting on YouTube. There being no further business of the council, we are now adjourned at 7:29.
And Chief White, your background is pretty intense, just gotta say. And ironically, the rest of you have almost the same wall color. It's pretty interesting.
Except I think Ryan has very limited wall hangings.
Yeah, I know. It's
I
pretty
know.
boring.
I made it boring.
I was gonna say,
Oh,
I've been to your office.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much, and stay safe. Goodbye.
All right, thank you for everybody. Night.